Hello again, and welcome to part 2 of The Man with the Purple. Anna stood at the window and watched. She heard her mother stop in at Mrs. Peters across the hall to say goodbye. Then she heard the quick, light click of her mother's heels going down the flight of stairs that led to the street. From her window, Anna could see her mother when she came out and hurried off. Anna watched till her mother was out of sight. Then she went over to her bureau drawer. Buried under her handkerchiefs was a shining gold penny. Years ago, her father had given it to her. "Someday, when you want something badly," he said, "take out this penny and wish hard on it. Maybe one of the ancient gods will hear you and help you get what you want." Today, Anna knew how worried her mother was, not only because Dr. Barley had said her father was worse today, but because the summer was half over and the Vargases, who had rented the house, wanted to know soon whether or not they could have it for 2 years more. If her father had to be in the sanatorium much longer, Anna's mother would have to tell them yes. They needed the money to stay here in the city near the sanitarium. But 2 years more? 2 years of crowded schools in winter and long hot summer days like this, broken only by visits uptown to the hospital and back? By now, the doctors said, her father should be feeling better. His health was better, they admitted. It was a matter of his spirits. He seemed, during his dreadful disease, to have lost the desire to get well. He was no longer the gentle, funny father, interested in everything from the tiniest ant to the largest, loudest, flashing country storm. He was pale and listless. Nothing interested in him now. He smiled when Anna and her mother opened the door to his room on their visits, but only briefly. Some echo of his strength and charm kindled for a moment in his eyes. But by the time they'd sat down and the visit began, he changed. As he saw how thin Anna's mother was, as he watched Anna herself against the flat whiteness of the room, he seemed to sink back. To sink back before their eyes, back into an immense tiredness against which he could not fight. "If we could only get him a little stronger," Dr. Barley said. "Perhaps you could take him home at the end of the summer. We need something to liven him up. We need something to make him remember how much he wanted to be well and home with you two. We need something to reawaken his interest in that book of his." Anna looked down at the wishing penny in her hand. She wished with all her heart that something somewhere could do what the doctor said, make her father want to write his book again, make her father well. Then they wouldn't have to let the Vargases stay 2 more years. Then they could go back with father to the country, and he could work on his book again. They would be home together and happy together once more, she thought. When Anna came out of the building, the heat and dust and city noise were at their noonday worst. She walked on down the block and around the corner. There was one wispy city tree fenced in a low, looped wire circle. She looked at the caked, dry dust from which it grew. Nothing, not even a dandelion or daisy or bit of crabgrass had taken root there. Nothing could, she thought. Slowly she walked toward the row of stores at the end of their block. There was the shop where she and her mother took their shoes to be mended. There was a food shop where once in a while Anna's mother bought a cold supper for them. There was a pastry shop with rows of bright little cakes lined up like jewels in the trays. There was a hardware store, and Anna spent some time looking in the window at steam irons, electric percolators, outdoor cooking grills, and garden tools. She wondered who would buy garden tools here in the city. A rush of homesickness swept over her again for the rich black soil in the country at home. She could almost feel it under her fingers as she stood there. Many a time she had used her hands without tools at all to replant wildflowers uprooted by a storm, or perhaps by some careless passerby. She reached into her pocket and felt the wishing penny there. At the end of the string of stores was a flower shop. Here Anna stopped. She had only the penny in her pocket, the shining, wishing penny from happy times long ago. But perhaps, she thought, one penny would buy one flower, one daisy or one rose, and she could bring it to her father on his birthday. She could come here early next Saturday before they went to the hospital and bring it fresh and beautiful to cheer up the dismal room with its pitcher, its hospital spoons in a glass, on the ugly tray by her father's bed. She looked into the flower shop window. In one corner were bowls and vases filled with sweet peas, roses, asters, anemones. A little white card with the prices stood under each group of flower. And Anna sighed as she realized that her penny wouldn't even buy a single flower from the bunches of 12. She rubbed the useless penny in her pocket without thinking as she turned towards the larger part of the window display. As she stood rubbing it, she caught her breath with surprise and delight, for it was suddenly like being back in the country again. The florist had brought big mossy rocks and piled them across the back of the window so the flower store behind was hidden. Running over the rocks into a fern-bordered pool was a clear stream of sparkling water. Though Anna couldn't really hear it through the window, the sight of it made her remember the sound of all the brooks and streams at home. Edged in between the pots of ferns and mossy rocks were pots of African violets, blue ones and white and purple. So skillfully were they arranged that they seemed to be growing out of the earth. Trailing down over the mossy hill, half covering the violets, were philodendron and ivy vines looking as wild and wandering as the clinging wild vines by the wild wood streams at home. Anna stood looking and looking at the graceful sprays of fern and vine, at the light and dark greens of the leaves, at the pale violets. She could almost breathe the cool, moist, earth-smelling air. It was as though she were caught up in a magic spell. Suddenly the city seemed far away. The ivy, the philodendron, the little running brook, the mossy rocks and wild flower-like violets among the ferns didn't even seem to be divided from her by glass. She felt as though she were part of them. Suddenly, she heard a voice behind her. "They are beautiful, aren't they, little girl?" Anna turned. A tall man was standing beside her. His hands were in his pockets. She hadn't heard him come at all, but he looked as though he had been there a long time. He had a pleasant face and a strange smile that twisted up on one side and down on the other. His voice was so strong and gentle that she liked him at once. "Yes," said Anna, as though she were thinking out loud. "They are lovely. They make me feel I'm in the country again. But of course, none of them are really as lovely as wildflowers." "Wildflowers?" asked the man. "Yes," said Anna, remembering all the flowers she loved so well. "The ones that just grow wild, like buttercups and Queen Anne's lace, like devil's paintbrush and dogtooth violets and butter and eggplants and daisies and clover." Suddenly she stopped. The man was looking down at her, smiling. "But those are weeds," he said. "But they're lovely," said Anna. "Some of them are more beautiful than flowers like those." She pointed to the corner of the window, where the bouquets of roses and sweet peas were grouped together. "What is your name?" the man asked her. "Anna," she said shyly, staring now at his eyes. They were a shade she had never seen in eyes before. They were deep purple, like the purple of dark wood violets when the sun is on them, like the purple of the big, sweet-smelling dark purple clover she had just been talking about. "I wanted to see if I could buy a flower for my father," said Anna. "Since there are no wild flowers in the city, I thought I'd buy maybe just one flower for him. It's his birthday soon and he's ill." She felt she had to tell this strange man everything she could. "My father used to love the country, and he worked best there. He worked on a book about the ancient gods, and he loved it. But here in the city he got so sick he had to go to the hospital. Next week is his birthday, and I have nothing to bring him. All the money I have is this, and I can't buy a flower with it. It's a wishing penny my father gave me long ago when he was well, and I was little, and we lived in the country." She held out her hand with the shiny wishing penny for the man to see. He smiled again. And again she stared at his purple eyes. "I have," he said, "the very thing for you, and it won't cost you more than the penny you have. The penny is just right for it." Well, so that is the end of part 2 of The Man with the Purple Eyes. And though I read it by myself today, look who dropped in to say hello and say goodbye. It is...
Well, hello first. Hi, I'm Mark Kraft.
And what did you think of that part, Mark? I know you weren't here, but you heard...
It's mysterious. It's mysterious. I don't know. I thought it was good that she took a walk and she, there's this awful thing going on with her father in the hospital. He's so sick, and she seemed to feel better. I can understand that, but I'm just mystified that who is this guy with the purple eyes that shows up?
And what is he going to give her that costs only 1 penny, no more, no less, even though it's a special penny?
Is he going to keep the penny?
It sounds like.
Yeah. Well, her dad gave it to her, but...
Yeah, but she's doing something for her dad. I mean, there's kind of a circular thing, and a penny itself is circular.
And her father is a specialist in myth and story and kind of mysterious things.
I wonder what he's going to give her in return for that. He says he has just the thing. What can it be?
Well, it can't be change for a penny, so...
Well, so this is part 2. We still have part 3 and 4 to go. And so Mark came in to say hello first, and now we're going to do our classic Mark and Crescent goodbye that we're doing for these readings. So are we ready to send them our goodbye
I'm
gift?
ready. I'm ready.
Okay. You know what it is, and hopefully it will keep you going just fine until we get to part 3, so you'll stay curious and interested, but not too worried, because just like a shiny gold wishing penny, here is something. Did you get that from us? I hope you did. I hope it's winging through the air to you. Oh, there! It landed. I know it did. We will see you tomorrow. Thank you. Goodbye.